Adam, I got a very big compliment for you from Rabbi Canarik, who you covered the other day.
Oh, excellent.
He really,
Great.
he said that you really, you know, your participatory, complimented that. Okay, we are on Yud Zayin and Aleph. We are on 17a. By the way, someone told me, in his opinion, these pages that we're learning are from the hardest pages in the whole tractate of Shabbat. You understand that? We're in heavy territory over here, everybody. We're in deep territory. Deep, 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 deep. Okay. The Gemara says the following. We were on 17a, 17a2, which we spoke about another one of the Gezerot, another one of the 18 Gezerot. This might be number 12 on the list. A number of the 18 Gezerot that they made in the one of Joshua, in the attic of Hananiah. And what was this Gezerah? This was the question: if a person harvests grapes for the purpose of pressing the grapes, making wine out of the grapes, not to eating the grapes, and while you cut the grapes got wet from the liquid that emanated from that left the grapes. You were not looking for liquid to come out of the grapes. Not that you squeezed it on the grapes because you wanted the liquid to go into the grapes. And the question here is the grapes now prepared to receive contamination from a dead mouse or whatever that might be? We explained that there's a law for a food to receive contamination. It has to be detached from the ground, and it has to also have a liquid to have subsequently from the gone onto that food. But if the liquid did not go onto if no liquid has gone onto the food will not become prepared to be able to receive contamination in the future. Even if liquid does go onto a food, we said if you didn't put the liquid on the food, if liquid went onto the food, if you didn't intend to put the liquid on the food, the the food would not be prepared to receive contamination if the liquid was not done with your desire, with your intention that you wanted it to be there. And here, the case is that the liquid is going to be going, you have no intention, you have no desire for the liquid to go onto the grapes, because the Gemara is talking about, at this point, the Gemara is talking about a basket that has holes on the bottom of the basket. So that liquid that comes out of the grapes is just going to fall through the holes of the basket. And therefore, you have no interest that the liquid should come out of the grapes onto the grapes, because you're concerned you're going to lose out on the deal. If we would be dealing with a basket that has no holes in the bottom, so then you would be happy that the liquid, it wouldn't bother you. You'd be happy that the liquid came out. Then it would prepare the food to be ready to receive contamination, right? That's how we explained. Morning, Ralph.
Morning, Rabbi.
We are on 17a2. And we had an argument between Shammai and Hillel, the great Shammai and Hillel. We know a lot of the argument between the Beit Shammai. There's many more disagreements between the Beit Shammai, the yeshiva, the house, the yeshiva of Shammai, the yeshiva of Hillel. So here we have an argument between Shammai and Hillel. Shammai says that once the juice went onto the grapes are considered now prepared to receive contamination, even though the juice is going to, is not going to remain on the grapes. It's going to eventually, a certain amount of juice is going to come. It's going to go leibud. It's going to go to waste. And Hillel says that it does not, that type of situation, good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, does not prepare the grapes for contamination. Just to bring Mark up to date, we're talking about a person harvesting grapes for the purpose of the wine. And the question is, and the liquid came out of the grapes and went on to the grapes. You know, let's say it was in a basket and it went on to the grapes. But the question is that considered, are the grapes now considered prepared to receive contamination? Because we said in order to receive contamination, the liquid has to go on willingly. And since you want the liquid to go on to the food item, and here you really don't want the liquid to go on because the liquids are going to fall out. It's going to be afraid it's going to go onto the floor because there are holes in the basket. So Hillel says it's not going to, this liquid that came out of there are 7 liquids that have that could prepare a food to receive contamination. One of the liquids is water, milk, and one of the liquids is wine. Wine is a liquid that could prepare a food to receive contamination. So here we have the wine that came out of the grape, that's on the grape, but we said there's another condition. It's not only if the water goes on, the liquid goes on to the food, it has to be done in a way that you want it to be there. If you didn't put it there and the liquid, it rained, let's say, onto the food, onto the food, and you did not want it to rain onto the food, even though it came in contact with water, it will not prepare the food for contamination. So Omale Hillel Shammai. Hillel says to Shammai, Mipnei ma botzrin b'tahara. Hillel says to Shammai, we're now on 1782. Why is it that when it comes to harvesting grapes, we harvest the grapes using utensils that are tahar, that are pure, not contaminated? The ein moskin b'tahira, meaning you, Shammai, you hold that the liquid that comes out of the grapes would prepare the grapes for contamination. And therefore, you're very careful when you're harvesting the grapes, the utensils that you harvest the grapes into, the basket, you make sure that that basket is not contaminated, right? Was not in contact with any dead animal. Because if it would have been in contact with a dead animal, let's say that would make the type of animal that will make it contaminated, you're afraid that now if the grapes go into that utensil, the grapes will become contaminated because the utensil is contaminated. Now, that's your opinion. My opinion, Hillel says, even if you would have a contaminated vessel, the grapes going into it will not become contaminated because there's no liquid that came in contact with the grapes. The liquid that came out from the grapes is not considered liquid according to me that I want, and therefore it won't contaminate the grapes. So therefore, so Hillel says, I have no problem technically with theme. We read between the lines. Hillel will have no problem using a contaminated container to collect the grapes because the grapes will not become contaminated through the container because the liquid that comes out from the grapes that go on the grapes was not done not done willingly. I'm not happy about it because I'm afraid the liquid will get lost, will go onto the ground. And therefore, the grapes will not become doctor. The grapes will not become contaminated, even though the grapes are contained in a vessel that is contaminated. Because in order for grapes to become contaminated, there has to be a liquid that goes onto the grapes. The liquid that comes out from the grapes, and not only there has to be a liquid that has to go onto the grapes, the liquid that goes on the grapes has to be done willingly, that I want it. And here I don't want the liquid to be on the grapes. So therefore, it will not become contaminated. Is that clear, everybody? Okay. So Hillel says to Shammai, according to you, you say it is a problem, so you should also use non-contaminated vessels to collect the olives. When you are harvesting the olives, you should also use non-contaminating vessels, because the same logic is when the juice comes out of the olives, that juice that comes out of the olives will come in contact with the olives and prepare the olives for contamination. And if it's in a vessel that is contaminated, then the olives will become contaminated because they are already prepared for contamination through the juice that leaves the olives. So that is Hillel's question to Shammai. So Hillel said to Shammai, it doesn't seem that you're being consistent. The fact that you are particular about harvesting grapes in a non-contaminated vessel, you should also hold that olives should also be a non-contaminated vessel. And they were going back and forth, and Hillel was questioning Shammai. And really, what he really was saying, the same way you did not think we need to make an enactment regarding olives in a pure utensil. You said you could harvest the olives into a non-pure utensil because the olives are not considered prepared to receive contamination because you had no interest in the juice coming out of the olive. So too, you should not make any decree regarding grapes in a non-pure vessel. So Amalo, so Shammai says to Hillel, im tiknik, it's a little tongue twisted. Im takniteni, if you're going to constantly ask me questions on my position, gozrini tuma afala masika, I will go ahead and make my enactment not only regarding grapes, I will extend it to olives as well. Now, what is Shammai saying to Hillel? Now, obviously, Shammai had his reason why it was specifically for grapes. We have to have it. We have to make this decree that the grapes will be now prepared for contamination, and not for olives. And one of the reasons Tosfos brings down there's a difference between olives and grapes is because the juice that comes out of the olives, when you harvest the olives, it's like the sap from the olives. It's not considered real oil. It's only after a certain amount of time would it be considered oil. So Tosfos says, when the olives are stored to ripen, after a certain amount of time, that's when the juice that comes out of the olives is considered real juice. But in that early stage is right when you harvest the grapes, the olives, when that little juice that comes out, it's not the real deal, not the real thing. It's not classified as oil, but rather as a sap. And therefore, Shammai says there's no reason to say that the olives are prepared to receive contamination, because we said it has to be one of the 7 liquids, and that sap that comes out of the olives at the harvesting is not considered a real liquid to prepare the olives to receive contamination. So that's why Shammai did not make a gzeira problem with the olives. But nevertheless, he says, but if you're going to keep on asking me the questions, what does he mean? What does Shammai? So Hillel disagreed with Shammai's distinction between grapes and olives, and if you're going to go ahead and keep on asking me questions and challenge my distinction, so then I'm going to have to add a decree to the olives as well. What does Shammai mean to say? Because if you, Hillel, cannot tell the difference between the olives and the grapes, so then I will have to make a decree on both the olives as well. Because if you can't make a distinction, then the people maybe won't make a distinction, and maybe I should go ahead and decree on the olives as well. But meanwhile, he's holding to his position. Shammai is holding to his position, and he's saying that if you harvest the grapes and juice comes out of the grapes, that juice, even though you do not want that juice, you would that nevertheless, because the juice is going to go, there's holes at the bottom of the basket. Nevertheless, the grapes will be considered prepared to receive contamination. And the Gemara is going to ask, well, what would be the reason for it? If you don't want the juice, if you don't want the juice, so why is the juice, why should the grapes be prepared? So the Gemara says, my time. What is the reason? The Gemara is right over there. What is the reason for this enactment that the grapes receive preparation through this juice? So Amma Zeiri Amr Chanina. He says, Zeira Shema Yivsereno Bekupo Tameot. What's the concern? That maybe it's true. Today, we are now on, I skipped a line in the Gemara, I'm sorry. It says, Natsu Chereb Beit HaMedrash. So I'm going to go back, I'm sorry. The 1782 on the bottom, Natsu Chereb Beit HaMedrash. They went ahead and they put a sword in the Beit Midrash, like sticking a sword in the ground type of thing. If you wanted to make a count and you want to say nobody could come out of no one could leave, they put a sword in the Beit Midrash. Anybody who's here got to remain here. Nobody leave. And if you want to leave, you can't leave, because we want to make a counting. We want to see who's gonna, whose opinion is correct between Shammai, Moni Mr. Amos. Whose opinion is more correct between Shammai and Hillel? And v'oto hayom oto Hillel kafuf yoshev Shammai ki'echad hatamidim. That day, Hillel was humbled, was sitting in front of Shammai. It sounds like people gathered around Shammai, and they became like Shammai was the stronger group, and Hillel was like humbled in front of Shammai, like one of the students. The Gemara says a very interesting thing, that day was a very difficult day for the Jewish people, like the day that the golden calf was made. Which, now, what's the connection between the golden calf and Hillel being sitting in front of Shammai, like one of the students instead of Hillel? So one of the commentaries say that the fact that it's like everybody gathers. Imagine everybody gathers around. There's two rabbis in the room, and everybody gathers. The Shammai's people gather around him, and they gave him, and it caused Hillel, like Hillel was lowered, like he's not so significant. And as a result of that, and people saw this, perhaps they were influenced by Shammai's opinion, and the vote went more for Shammai. Because if Hillel would have been looked at in a more significant manner, so maybe people would have listened to what he had to say. But when it looks like this is when everybody's just gathering around this opinion, and therefore they didn't give proper attention to what Hillel had to say. And that was similar to the golden calf. Because you had Aaron, you had Hur, they were trying to say, they were going against the golden calf. They were telling the people, don't do this. Moshe Rabbeinu is coming back. Take it easy. Tomorrow, be patient. And if they...
Even the students of Hillel or whatever, everybody went with Shammai.
Right, that they gather around Shammai, and therefore Hillel... It could be Hillel. Right, it could. Right, so it sounds like that he would have been a more acceptable opinion than Rosh Hashanah, but and therefore it was like the day that the golden calf was in, and the Gozur, but then the Gemara says the Gozur Shammai Hillel, and Hillel, he accepted the opinion of Shammai, and they both made the Gezerah on the grapes, but the people did not accept the Gezerah. There is such a thing that when the rabbis make a Gezerah, when they make an enactment, in order for the enactment to be considered ratified, if that's the right word, the people have to accept it. It's like an amazing thing. If the people don't accept it, then the rabbis pull back. They say, because they estimated, right? They estimated that. I mean, the rabbis will never make a decree on the people that they feel that people can handle. But if they see that the people don't handle it, if they're dealing with good people. It's not that they're dealing with bad people. If they see that the people have difficulty handling it, so the rabbis pull back and they drop it. But what happened was, Atu Talmidahu Gozur, but then their students came and they had they reenacted the Gzerah, and then what happened was the Kiblu Minayu, and the people accepted that enactment, and that was of when originally Shammai and Hillel made the enactment, people didn't accept it, and then that day when in the attic of Hananiah, when the students of Shammai and Hillel made a vote, and that day they they did accept it, right? And this is number 12 of the 18. So now the Gemara gets to the question. My time up. What is the reason we are now on, I presume, 17a3? My time out. What is the reason why the grapes become prepared through the juice that came out of the grapes when you're not interested in the juice coming out of the grapes? Because there's a hole in the bottom of the basket and the juice will go to be lost. So the Gemara says like this: Amar Zeiri Amar Chanina. Gzeira Shema Yivserenu Bekupot Tmeot. Meaning to say, if you're using a basket that's pure, that's tahar, that's non-contaminated, there shouldn't be, technically, there would not be a problem, shouldn't be a problem, of the liquid that goes onto those grapes. The grapes will not be considered technically on a Torah level prepared to receive contamination because you have no interest in that liquid that went onto the grapes. However, we're going to say that that grapes are prepared to receive contamination, not by its own merit. Its own merit, it shouldn't be prepared to receive contamination because you're not interested, Mr. Haber, in that liquid going onto the grapes. But we're concerned about the scenario that you will harvest the grapes in a contaminated vessel, which you could see why people would make the mistake, and they would say, if you could harvest, if the grapes are not considered prepared, nothing happens to the grapes when it's in a non-contaminated vessel. People will say, even if it's in a contaminated vessel, the same scenario, the grapes will not become contaminated because the food was not prepared. But this opinion holds. There's an opinion that says, because the juice wasn't, we say, in a pure utensil, you had no intention, you did not want the juice to come onto it. And once you don't want the juice to come onto the grapes, now the grapes are not considered prepared. There's step one, one's a result of the other, right? And if I don't want the juice to come onto the grapes are not considered prepared to receive contamination. Right? In order for grapes to receive contamination, to be prepared.
Prepared for contamination.
Prepared to be able to receive contamination. Exactly.
So who on earth would put a liquid on something intentionally to prepare it to contamination?
Because let's say I want the liquid is good for the grapes. Let's say if I want, so therefore automatically, if liquid comes onto grapes, If I wanted the liquid, let's say it rained on the grapes and I want the rain to come onto the grapes, now the grapes are considered prepared for its temperature because it's liquid that went on with that I'm happy that it went on. The fact that I'm happy about it makes it significant. The fact that it makes it significant, so that would make it prepared to receive contamination. And look,
One, it makes it possible.
but possible.
Prepared it for me. It's like I prepared food to eat because I'm welcoming the action. You know, it's welcoming. It's turning.
I'm welcoming the liquid to go on. See, I'm welcoming point one to get wet. And once it's good for it, then now that automatically prepares it.
Right.
Now it's ready for full prepared, just like we said yesterday. Right? So now it's ready, it's eligible, very good. Eligible is the right word. Now it's eligible to receive contamination. Right. So now it's eligible to receive contamination once I'm happy that the liquid goes on it. Now there's an interesting other thing. If I directly put liquid on it, it seems like even if I don't want it, but if I put it on, it would be we consider that also as since if I know that it's happening, you know, yeah, that also would prepare it if you actually do it directly. But so here we're saying that the grapes technically should not, if I use a utensil that's not contaminated, the grapes should not have received eligibility to receive contamination because I'm not interested in the liquid going onto the grapes. Well, what about the same scenario, the same exact scenario, if I'm using a utensil that is contaminated? The only thing that's changed is that the utensil is contaminated. Would a utensil that's contaminated, and I have the grapes in that utensil, and liquid leaves the grapes and goes onto the grapes unintentionally, I don't want it to be there. Would the fact that the utensil is contaminated make anything different? So that is two different opinions about that. Now let's try this. We have to look more into what will be the logic. We'll look at the language of the Gemara. Let's try to see. Zera Shema Yivserenu Bekupot Meot. Maybe you're going to harvest the grapes in a utensil that is contaminated, and somehow, and the fact that the utensil is contaminated would give significance to the liquid that's contained in the utensil, which would directly simultaneously make the food eligible to receive contamination. So what is this idea? So he says there is an opinion that if liquid, right, yes, if the basket could hold the liquid, the wine, then everybody would agree you want the wine. You're happy that the liquid come out, and therefore it seems like you're happy, you have no problem, and therefore that would automatically make it eligible for contamination. The Gemara is talking now that there's a hole on the bottom of the basket, so therefore you really don't want the liquid to come out. So the Gemara, what's that again? Should be okay. So there is an opinion that says that the fact that the utensil is contaminated changes everything. Why? What is that? He says the fact that it's contaminated gives significance to the liquid that comes into that utensil, and the liquid would receive contamination, meaning the utensil is contaminated, the oil that comes out of the grape, not the oil, sorry, the wine, the juice will now receive contamination from the utensil, and that simultaneously that would make the grape eligible for and eligible and contaminated at the same time, right? Because you can't contaminate the grapes unless they became eligible, correct? Right. So everything is simultaneously the liquid becomes contaminated through the utensil that's touching the liquid's touching the utensil, and it's at the same time that liquid is going onto the grapes, preparing the grapes for contamination, and therefore the grapes become contaminated. Because of that, Shammai says you can't use a utensil that is non-contaminated because people, if you're going to use that, and people are going to, and you're not going to, and you're going to say that the grapes are not eligible, so people will say the same thing by a contaminated vessel, and they'll say that the grapes are not eligible. But we're saying by a contaminated vessel, because it it will make it eligible. So therefore, to prevent confusion, Shammai says even if you use a non-contaminated vessel, the grapes are considered eligible, and the juice of the grapes go on to the grapes, even though there's holes on the bottom, and on a Torah level, it's not eligible because you're not interested in the juice. But because of the situation, we have to worry about if you're going to say this is not eligible to receive contamination, they'll say that when you use a contaminated vessel, the grapes will not be considered eligible and receive contamination. So to prevent that confusion, Shammai says even when you use a non-contaminated vessel, we consider it eligible. Eligible, right. If you use a non-contaminated vessel, we'll say that the grapes become eligible as a result of that juice that came out from the grapes, even though you didn't want the juice because of the situation of a contaminated vessel. Right, exactly. That's Shammai's opinion. Is that clear? Right? It's a strict, but he's making a fence. Again, rabbis, the job of the rabbis is to protect the Torah. He's trying to make a fence to make sure people won't make a mistake.
More importantly, we're taking out the idea of intention.
Right, exactly. That because of the case. Whether you want it done. Right.
Say wet is eligible.
Right. That's Shammai. And we're saying wet makes it eligible. So therefore, if it would be, and if it would have been, if the utensil would have been contaminated, it would also make it contaminated. And here, when it's not contaminated, it makes it eligible for contamination. Not contaminated, but it makes it eligible. Now, we have a very eligible bachelor, great guy here. Maybe have a good idea for a shidduch for him, Mark. Maybe, he's not contaminated, and he's not going to. By the way, you know, I'm going to say when you're eligible for bachelor, then you're eligible for contamination, and therefore you get married, you're not eligible for contamination anymore. How do you like that? So you're not eligible doesn't mean you get, like you said, it's not contaminated, but you're eligible for contamination. But marriage will remove that eligibility for contamination. How do you like that, Mark? You like that or not? Is that a good one or not? Right, great one. I'm a big fan of Adam, Mark. So we got a, and he's a young lawyer, and but maybe we have all responsibility to help this great guy. Okay. Elam the Ama. By the way, you could save the copy of this. You could send it out to any of you. Ella the Gemara says the man the Yama ain't kli tamei, but there's a different opinion that says we don't say that the kli tamei, the fact that the utensil is contaminated, that automatically will make that liquid eligible to contaminate the grapes, even though it's in the contaminated vessel. We don't consider that that the fact that the utensil is tame to make this uh, liquid eligible to contaminate the grapes. So if you hold that, when you don't want the liquid to go onto the grapes, so therefore, Michael and Mema. So why should Shammai, morning, Emmanuel, why should Shammai make the Gzeirah? Why should he say you have it's why is it eligible? If you hold it, if you hold this never that fact that it's tamei, the cleans you contaminated will not make that doesn't change the thing. So why is the case? So the Gemara says he's concerned because what about if you use a utensil that does not have a hole on the bottom? If you're going to say that when the utensil has a hole in the bottom, that the grapes aren't eligible, you will say that even when there is no hole on the bottom and the water,
There's no tension.
but then when there's no hole, you want it to collect. So therefore, people are going to say if when there's a hole, it's not eligible. But if you say when there's there's a hole, it's not considered eligible. People will make the mistake to think that even when there's no hole on the bottom of the utensil, it's also not eligible. But it's not true. Because if there's no hole, you're happy that the wine is collected. Saves you a little time from pressing the wine. So therefore, in order that people shouldn't make that mistake, so therefore Shammai says, all across the board, everything, whether even if it has a hole and it goes through, it's still eligible. Then okay, it's all eligible to receive contamination. Morning, everybody. We'll continue tomorrow. We're in heavy stuff over here, everybody. We're learning Tumah and Tahara. We're looking for the Beit HaMikdash to come back, and then all these laws of contamination and Tumah. It's coming up. Yes. Ralph, have a great day. Ronnie,